Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff, and thank you, members of the public. Welcome to this agenda briefing. And for those who haven't joined us with agenda briefings before, this isn't a decision-making meeting. This is a chance to go through next week's agenda and ask any questions of the relevant staff. So thank you all for attending. We do have an apology from Councillor Steele, and the rest of us are here. Sorry, Councillor Steck is an apology as well. My apologies. Are there any declarations of interest for tonight's meeting, councillors? I haven't received any. Thank you. We do have a deputation on the item. Doesn't actually have an item on it, but the planning item later in the agenda. When we get to that item, we'll invite Gary Holland to come and present at that stage. So moving along, councillors, we'll go into the agenda proper. Item 10.2.1. Is there any questions on that? All good, thank you. 10.3.1. Questions on this item, councillors? Thank you. 10.3.2. Any questions? Thank you. 10.4.1. As indicated, this was the item I was looking for. We do have a deputation to this item. So I'd like to invite Gary to come join us. I'm guessing Gary's here.
Where am I heading, Jace?
Just up to the front here on the microphone, thank you. So as I said, Gary, you're presenting to the group here. It's not a back and forth with elected members. It's just a chance to make a deputation, and we'll go from there. But you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Jason and fellow councillors. I represent the Pauline and Frank Fiore, the owners of the Mangles Corner store, which they have owned since 1978. It's their ongoing commitment to continue to provide convenience to the community with a drive-through coffee facility that has previously been approved. Now, going through the agenda items, the Appendix 10.4.1G, there's a few anomalies which I'd like maybe the planning department to provide an addenda to for next week's meeting. Context and character, the distinctive characteristics of a local area. What are they? This scheme 8, took that long to develop. Why haven't they told us for each local area what their distinctive characteristics are? Bunbury is a set of streets, houses, some trees, some cars, some movement, bigger shopping centres, smaller shopping centres, but it's not defined. What are the distinctive characteristics of the local area around the Mangles Corner store? Who knows? Secondly, the landscape quality. The verge is turfed. The corner store maintains a peppermint tree and its guarded surround and a triangulated piece of turf. The Fiores are quite happy to abide by whatever requirement is for landscaping improvement is put forward. The built form and scale. Obviously this building was built in, I'm guessing, post-World War II. Started as a small shop and then became a video store, or started as a video store and then became what it is today. The built form and scale have remained. We haven't complicated that in any way. Stays as the same mass. The drive-through is at the back of the place. Can't see it from the front. Same scale, same form. Functionality and the built quality. The objectives for the local centre zone focus on easily accessible services for household shopping and community needs that do not adversely impact adjoining owners. This driveway separates two properties that the Fiore's own. They are the neighbours. A car doing 3 k's an hour down a drive-through would create 15 decibels. You flush your toilet at 50 decibels, you won't, negligible sound. We can't see how we're affecting any other neighbours. There's also, I've included in my response, trends in the USA, where there is an increasing demand for drive-through facilities following the pandemic and following pressure from the younger people to not have to face or sit down in massive groups. They're much more comfortable going up to a window, grabbing something, leaving. That's a trend that will increase everywhere. Sustainability. This is for me, this is a question for Pauline Hanson. Please explain sustainability. From 1978 to today, this property has existed and survived, employed countless staff, some full-time, a lot part-time. It sustains itself, and it sits in its little triangle, sustained. Amenity. The proposed drive-through facility is expected to increase traffic. On what basis is it going to increase traffic? Please explain that. There is no noise, we're not generating any extra noise, or any extra vehicle movements. 5 o'clock in the morning, the front car park is full, with people buying smoko, buying coffee, buying papers, just dropping in, dropping out. That won't change. Legibility. It's there. It's the head of an apex. It's the axis of an apex, of two streets. It's legible. But it would be more legible if people could walk there. There's been no footpath either side forever. That would make it a little bit more legible. Safety. This is based on the other premise that the drive-through facility is expected to increase the level of traffic. We refute this and say that the level of traffic will be the same as it is today. The community. Good design responds to local community needs as well as the wider social context, providing environments that support a diverse range of people and facilitate social interaction. We know that social interaction under the US model is decreasing. No one is terribly interested in social interaction in big groups. And the drive-through allows for that interaction not to happen in a busy environment. We're just driving through, buying a coffee, buying a paper, buying smoko or whatever. It's quite passive. Aesthetics. Good design is a product of skilled, judicious design, a skilled, judicious design process that results in attractive and inviting buildings and places that engage the senses. The senses at Mangles Corner Store are once you get inside. There's an array of stuff that's going to serve every purpose you can have in your house. The drive-through facility will increase traffic. Again, that's that point which we refute. It will not increase traffic, and if it's unseen. It's behind the building. Frank and Pauline are keen to now continue to have this drive-through facility built. They had a previous approval, which was confounded, and Frank missed the opportunity to renew it by 3 weeks, compounded by a pandemic, I don't know what the planning department released on assessment periods when there is a pandemic. If you've got 2 years and there's a 2.5 year pandemic, what's the use of having, what is your policy during that pandemic time? Also, someone drove through the main store. It was locked down for 3 or 4 months. How does that time, if you can have your officers relook at it, how does that impinge on our 2-year approval? And we would ask you to please support this drive-through. It will not be detrimental to anything, except if your kids want a job on the weekend, they've got one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions? And we do have a number of the planning staff members here who will hopefully be able to field any questions from our elected members. Councillor Gassett?
Yes, so the allegation speaker was saying there was previous approval. Can I just have a bit of an explanation there, please?
Sure, there was this particular item, I don't know if it's exactly the same, that might have to be there. It did come to council before. The officer's recommendation was to refuse at that time as well, but council elected to approve it at that time. I believe that was it is in the report, is it 2016? And I guess to follow up on that question, was there any extensions given in some of those questions there around that? Was there any consideration given to pandemics or extenuating circumstances to extend that through the CEO?
Through the Mayor. Oh, sorry. I jumped in the gun there.
So, Mayor, my understanding of every local government is that, yes, whilst we understand the pandemic, there was no changes across the board for any of the timeframes, but Gareth may have another comment to make.
Apologies there. Through the Mayor. So the 2016 development approval had a 2-year expiry, so that would have been November 2018. The COVID exemptions didn't come into effect until April 2020. And the planning staff did advise in mid-2020 that the DA had expired and was not substantially commenced. So it had been expired for quite some time before the COVID.
Thank you. Councillor Gazza?
So I'm just wondering, in terms of when a previous council approves something or makes a decision on something, whether there's any sort of moral, ethical requirement to honour that decision, or even a legal requirement.
Not legally, because obviously that was approved under conditions, and one of those conditions was that development to commence within that time period. So obviously when the development didn't commence, that lapsed. So it'll be up to this council to determine that next decision, and that's up to your personal standing whether or not you should agree to a previous council decision, Councillor Gassett.
Okay. And in terms of precedents where, say, drive-throughs are approved in other locations in Bunbury with a similar objections, and someone wants to, and that was greenfields, and people weren't expecting anything there, versus something that's already established, and they want to also modify it to have drive-through. There's some sort of a procedural fairness or even precedent, legal precedent, that you approve one, the same council, and disapproves another.
I'll ask the CEO if there's any answer from himself or any planners.
So thank you, Mayor. Generally, each application is treated on its merits. When, you know, in my time as a local government mayor and as a local government elected representative, you were told there was no such thing as precedence, that you treat everything on its merits. Thank you, Mayor.
Just last one. So we had an application that council approved despite the recommendation being not to approve it a few months ago, and that included an alternative recommendation. I'm just wondering whether we can have an alternative recommendation included here.
Sure. Councillor Gassett, I'll ask the CEO to answer that one.
So the previous application, as you, as councillors will...
Sorry, CEO, I think we weren't talking about this previous application. Yeah. If I understand, Councillor Gassett, you were talking about the fact that the last item that came before council did have two recommendations.
Yeah.
So
thank you, Mayor, I was just going to get to that. So that previous application was for the building of a shed and with some setbacks that were closer and some variations that were required. Given that is quite a different application to this one. So as my understanding, and the staff can, I'll pass to the staff in a minute, is that since the previous application, which has lapsed, the planning scheme has changed, and in fact there was clauses put in there around these sorts of drive-throughs. So there is, and that's all contained in the report, the reasons from a planning perspective why the staff using the current scheme have assessed it against there and made comment against there. So all of that's in the report. In terms, Mayor, if you want me to go on to the alternative recommendation, given the complexity of this issue, and it's not as straightforward as the previous application around the shed, that hasn't been included in the report. But if that's something that elected members want to consider, then we can certainly work with elected members over the course of the week.
If I could just ask a question, which is probably following on from Councillor Gassop's comments there. Is this application exactly the same as the one that was approved in 2016? I know it's irrelevant in some ways, but I just want to know if that is the same.
So if I could ask Gareth, the senior planners, to answer that question.
There's some minor differences between the two applications.
The key changes probably relate to, there was a couple of waiting bays proposed in the drive-through originally, and the queuing was longer. So there's only minor differences. However, it's predominantly the same application. But as the CEO, the local planning framework has changed since then.
Sure. And CEO, if there was some appetite for some kind of approval for this, could there be an opportunity potentially for those conditions to be discussed with the proponent or the proponent's representative?
Thank you, CEO. Yeah, absolutely. So between now and next week, sorry, Mayor, if there was an appetite to do that, we could certainly. We've already looked at the potential for that, and that could be discussed with the proponents.
Councillor Turner.
I'm just interested, the gentleman said that the car park at 5 a.m. in the morning is full. How many car parks are there out the front, please?
CEO.
Can I ask Gareth Webber to answer that question?
Through the Mayor, just looking through the map here, there's 5 vehicle bays, but they often double stack. So you could look at potentially 10 spots being used at the front.
Any further questions? Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. Am I right in reading that the entrance will be off Mossop and onto Minninup? Is that correct? Okay. How will people be directed from Mossop onto Minninup? Do we know how that will happen?
CEO.
If I can ask the planning staff to answer that.
Sure. The application as it stands doesn't have any signage or line marking or any proposed upgrades to the road on Mossop Street. So the proposal as it stands would that vehicles entering, I gather, from a north or south direction from Mossop Street into the drive-through facility.
Any further questions?
Please,
Deputy
Mr. Mayor. Someone who travels that road fairly frequently, is there any ideas given to when people do exit onto Minninup, will they have to turn left or right, or will they be able to cross Minninup, that heading, say, north?
CEO, I'm getting a nod from the Director of Planning there.
Okay, the Director of Sustainable Communities.
That one.
So currently the proposal obviously is to refuse the request. However, in an alternate recommendation, consideration would be given to how that would be dealt with
Managed.
and addressed.
So Deputy Mayor, that could be if there was a alternative recommendation for approval there, that potentially, as we heard just earlier, you got three options with the application. You can refuse it, you can approve it without conditions, or you can approve it with conditions. So there is the potential there for a conversation if there is an appetite to approve it, with some conditions to apply there, which might need some discussions this week. And I would encourage those elected members who might be interested in that to certainly have that conversation early. For those who were at the briefing before, we indicated that things on the fly next week can sometimes not be super easy to work our way through. So if there is some conversations, I note that Frank and Pauline are here at the moment, and they have offered an invitation to any elected members who would like to go and visit their site. So if there is some interest, I would suggest reaching out to officers to have that conversation. Are there any other questions on this particular item? No? Thank you. I believe this does bring us to a close. Doesn't bring us to a close. Might just use that one instead of my one. Members of the public, we do have an item of confidential nature here that we have to deal with. So we will have to go behind closed doors to deal with this because there are some commercial confidence items on this one. So I'll ask that if you could vacate the room for this moment. We will reopen the room, but it will be reopen the room to say goodbye. So feel free to join us. If any of those who want to have any conversations about any of the items on the agenda, feel free. We will join you outside shortly.